Hello, and finally we're live. Sorry, we had a few technical glitches at the beginning, getting everyone connected. So we lost Alison somewhere along the way. It looks like we might have lost Jill as well. I'm going to hand over to Krishna and try to get the others back.
Okay, hi, hello all, hello Robert. Yes, that was pretty complicated, but we are here to talk about getting yourself into a Storyworld frame of mind. We're all a bit frazzled after a few sort of technical hitches, but yes, this is all in advance of the Conductor Conference next week, which has been organised by Transmedia Storyteller, Robert and his team, and that's on Friday next week on the 17th of October. So we hope to see quite a few of you down there. And at the end of this call, we'll have a little bit of something as incentive to get you along to come and see us there. I guess if I just talk a bit about the conference, it's a mixture of Conductor Conference is, I mean, it's UK and it's international. Lots of the most interesting people around in transmedia storytelling to talk about the how of it in relation to art, commerce, and academia, which bizarrely wouldn't be my first choice, but actually I think it's quite apt, really, because a lot of this stuff, obviously, we've all got this. Tension and conflict between art and commerce, but there's also lots of good stuff happening in academia in terms of transmedia. We've been doing some really exciting projects with universities, and that's been really good. I'm speaking to you from Bellyfield, and we do a mixture of making stuff for people and with people, and also consultancy work around transmedia and interactive stories, and really the space where stories are meeting the modern audience. So that's a bit about Bellyfield. We will be at the Conductor Conference, and we will be running Storyworld surgeries where people are coming along with their projects, and we're going to help them talk about how they can turbocharge their transmedia and their ideas, and really get their story world in shape for delivering to an audience and pitching for money and stuff like that. Right, we seem to have Jill back. Hello, Jill.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm enjoying technology today.
You were there, then you weren't, now you're back again. This is a digital thing. Something's going to go wrong, it generally will go.
I think there are little squirrels gnawing at the wires outside my house and interfering with my internet connection.
I'm sure we could make a story out of that.
Well, an entire world of squirrels and telephone wires and rooftops.
Excellent. How are you doing? What are you working on at the moment, Jill?
Well, right now I'm developing a bunch of new story worlds, so it's the most fun part of the year, and we've just released the 3rd season of Ruby Sky PI, which is our tween girl detective series that uses Conductor, and also it's quite a big story world.
Excellent, excellent. Well, just while we're starting, well, I guess Alison's disappeared, hasn't she? So I'll just kind of go through, I'll catch up on the schedule, and then we'll come back to you, Jill, and talk more about the stuff we sort of set up in terms of how and why you should think about a story world, how and why you should think in a story world way from the very inception of your idea.
Okay.
So to go to the big idea of story worlds, I mean, I think there's a consensus, having talked to everybody who's on the call in advance, that story worlds are really important to transmedia and interactive storytelling and any type of multi-platform story experience. And for me, it's something that we kind of came to kind of storytelling via games, and then we were making interactive films, and Storyworlds just seemed to be a brilliant way of creating lots of content that retained the DNA that made the original story so exciting to us. And the more we developed our sort of multi-platform storytelling chops along the way, I guess it seems to appeal both in terms of an audience way, where we're creating a whole world of touch points and narratives and mini stories going forwards and backwards in time, almost in 3 dimensions. And so we're making a lot of content within the story world, but also, so that's very exciting creatively, but also this gives us some real opportunities business-wise for exploitation on new channels, platforms, and devices. I mean, I would say, and I don't know if you guys would agree, that really that new type of business that is very multi-platform hasn't really come to fruition yet. I mean, maybe there are rare occurrences, but generally, you know, Transmedia is led by a tentpole kind of lead story. But I think as things progress, there will be some very exciting business developments around Transmedia. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I'll jump in. I think that we have to see Transmedia as a way of building audience too, and that's very important to the business as well. So we're thinking about story from the beginning in a very different way. We're thinking about it in terms of business models and in terms of how we're going to reach an audience. I've been speaking to kids, you know, kids who are 8 to 14, and we know they're migrating away from TV, that they're spending a lot of time on their devices, and so it's a really great way to reach them in their own milieu, to give them content that's on their mobiles, that's all spread out all over the web, and so on.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. So I think, as I mentioned before, Jill's going to talk about why you should be thinking about Storyworld, why you should be thinking in a Storyworld way from the very beginning of your project. I'm going to talk about some Storyworld development techniques that we use on our own projects and with clients that hopefully will save time and resources for you, those of you who are on the call who want to apply some of this stuff to your own projects. And this is all around the Conductor Conference, which I sort of started talking about. Obviously, that's happening next Friday. Robert, do you want to say a bit about what's happening at the conference?
Well, Jill will be headlining, so I'm looking forward to that. And what we're hold on, I'm going to mute some people. So what we're planning to focus on is really the how of transmedia storytelling, because often lots of conferences, people like to share their opinions and you know, they kind of talk about their projects, but sometimes they don't go into the depth that maybe you would like if you're a practitioner and you're looking to create your own participatory story experiences. You're kind of left with a little gap between seeing something that you admire and knowing how to actually emulate that. Like, how do you take your first steps? So I think what's great about this conference is we've asked all the speakers to really share their practice, to share how they, you know, really get going on this and sit down, and where the, not where the rubber hits the road, but where the pen hits the paper, or the, you know, the fingers hit the keys. So it's going to be interesting.
Cool. I like the rubber meets the road. I know it's kind of overused in bad business context. But.
Well, I was just worried about the environment. I mean, I don't want to imply that I'm encouraging everyone to drive.
That's a fair point. Okay, cool. And then later on, at the end of the call, we'll have an offer for people who haven't bought tickets yet, who want to buy tickets to the Conductor Conference. So I'd like to hand over to you, Jill, for you to tell us a bit about yourself, how you got to here, and talk about your interest in Storyworlds and how you approach that kind of work.
Okay, so It's a big topic. My name is Jill Golick. I've been a television writer for most of my career, but I actually started out very early on creating software for the very first series of home computers, the Apple II, Commodore 64, the Atari 400, 800. So, and I felt like the market wasn't really ready at that point, so I went back to writing television, and I spent many years developing my chops in that respect. And then when Facebook came along and the social media, I really felt like these were all tools for narrative, and I wanted to get back into the interactive game and start taking the storytelling chops that I developed as a television writer to create some new content, for a new kind of content. And I really spent a lot of time paying very careful attention to how I use the internet, what I'm like when I'm at my computer. And I know that, you know, even when I'm watching back in the day when I had a DVD drive, when I would watch a DVD on my computer, my hands would stray to the keyboard and I would want to do something. And so I began to look for ways to incorporate my hands on the keyboard into my storytelling. And eventually, after playing around with a bunch of different kinds of interactivity, I ran a live comedy soap opera on Twitter one year, and I did some various, you know, playing with interactivity and storytelling. I got a budget to develop this teen detective series, and what I thought was that mystery is such a great way to do interactivity, because I know as a mystery reader and watcher, I want to solve that mystery before the detective does. So what we try and do with our show is give kids all the assets they can have, all the clues, so that they can solve the mystery along with Ruby. So we provide them with the clues, and we give them some elements of interactivity so that they can solve the mystery along with her. And at the same time, we wherever we can, we build world-building websites. So we have, I don't know, 8 or 11 websites right now that are just, you know, anything that could be a website, we build. And then we have lots of Tumblrs and lots of social media and elements like that to really pull the audience into the story. And I'll just say one last thing, because I forget what the original question was, but when I begin the storytelling, and when we begin the storytelling, the first thing we think about is, who is our audience, where are they on the internet, and how can we build things into the story as we go along that will help us reach out to them. So we try and pay very close attention to who we can find and where they are on the internet, and how we can build that into the storytelling. And that's kind of more of what I'll be talking about when I...
Excellent, excellent. So, in terms of story worlds, did you build a story world for Ruby Sky PI? Were you thinking in that way up front?
Well, when we thought about Ruby, we said, you know, a teen detective can be on any platform. I mean, it's kind of a perennial of fiction. So we know that we can do books about her. We know we can do TV, movies, web series. And then I wrote a Transmedia Bible that talked about her future, her past, the lives of the other characters in the show, the geography of the world she lives in. And then, as I said, whenever we can, we make the world real on the internet. So if we're set in a library, we build the library website and we bring that to life as best we can. If we invent for the show, we create ads for the toys. We build the toys. We make their website, and so on.
Excellent. So, sorry, she's just gone.
Someone's at the door.
Right, fair enough. Okay, excellent. That was really good. Unfortunately, I've got some questions for her. She's back.
For our third season.
Oh, bloody hell. You've branched out into merchandising, Jill.
Well, they're not merch, but they're cute, aren't they?
What are they, Jill? Say again.
They're called Flobbles. Flobbles.com. So
I can feel myself kind of drawn to them.
They look cute.
Are they part of Ruby Sky, or are they?
Yes. In our third season, the Maltese puppy. These are stolen from a children's charity called Friends of Needy Kids. A shipment of Flobbles. So,
did this toy exist, or is this something that you've created?
We created it.
Okay, so what came first, Jill? Was it the need to create some merch that drove the story world, or vice versa?
It's all one.
There you go. Perfect answer.
Okay. Excellent. And so, why? Just to recap on the question, why is it that people should think in a story world way from minute one when they're developing an idea?
Is it me or is it you?
It's Jill. It's you.
Why? Because you're building your business opportunities, and your marketing opportunities at the same time as you're building your story.
Yeah. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So I've got some more general questions because I think I'm just intrigued in general when I'm reading your bio. What do you take from your earliest interactive projects, the one that you did on the Apple back in the 1980s or whatever it was? What do you take? What do you think is consistent between then and the stuff that you're doing now?
The interactivity is built into the story. They are all one thing. I try and make things that are cohesive and that are very audience-centered. So I try and pay very close attention to who my audience is, what they do, and make things that are specifically for them.
Okay. Excellent. And what is your favourite platform at the moment? What's your favourite device?
My iPhone.
Of course. I know the answer to all these.
Pocket.
I'm going to bounce it up. We can't be promoting the iPad. My favourite device is my Samsung Galaxy Note 2.
God, that's massive.
Android with it, yes. As I've got older, I need bigger screens. That's the problem.
But it's not the device itself so much as what it does, right? That it's the internet in your pocket, so you're connected to people all over the world, and plus you have a flashlight.
Okay.
What do you have, Jill? What was it? The plus you have a what?
Flashlight.
Oh, yes, that's true, yeah. That always comes in handy, especially for live experiences, actually.
When the lights go out.
Or live experiences that are set in the dark, like Johnny Virgo's murder mystery. You need the flashlight on your phone to see where you're going.
Cool. Excellent. Well, we were going to talk to Alison next about themes and heartbeats and genres in relation to Storyworld and Transmedia, but she's not here.
But let me ask you a question, Krishna, because so I know this is all about story worlds, but when you sit down with an idea, do you develop the story world before you develop the story?
Myself?
Yeah, for example.
I like it better that way. Often it's kind of both at the same time because you can't really have a story world without some idea of character or story. Sometimes it's better to kind of expand around a linear idea. But I think if I was going to go into doing something, one of my own projects now, I think what I would do is I would go market research first, which I never would have done in the past, and I would start to build a world and characters around a particular theme or something where I'd identified an audience and a need for entertainment or stories with a particular audience, and then I would try and test characters, and then I would build a world around them, and then I would very cheaply sort of throw bits of narrative around and see what worked and what didn't. I would do it all in a kind of, I would do the total inception in a market research type of way, which, like I say, you know, a few years back, that would have been like the antithesis of what a way that I would work. But now I just think that the audience are just, they're too powerful, really, to quote. Like the research, really, the audience, they know what they want, and you know, they will kind of be delivered stuff to some extent, but I'm much more interested in trying to find a way of working with the audience as early as possible. Does that make sense? It didn't. I wasn't really answering your question. But,
no, it kind of does, because I often you know, come across people who've developed a big sort of story world, and they have characters and, you know, factions and all this stuff, but there's no narrative yet. There's no real story. Like we don't know what problem someone's going to overcome, and so I think that's a bit of a weakness, because you could spend like a lifetime developing a massive story world, but until you actually have actual stories in it, then you don't have anything to actually.
I've never done it that way. I've never done it that way. There would always be like hand-in-hand development of a story or a problem that a character's having. The story world starts to build around. It's quite a natural thing. I mean, once you really get story worlds, the idea of it, it can just go like crazy and expand really quick, because the possibilities seem endless, and that's one of the things I think it's really good to start putting boundaries and limitations on your idea, and perhaps it's useful to do that on your story world, mainly because that's something that's tangible. So, you know, it might be geographical boundaries or time or some or even kind of what am I trying to say, thematic sort of boundaries, where you're only dealing with certain things. But yeah, no, we wouldn't develop a whole story world with no real stories in it, because, you know, things just crop up really that make sense to explore, or we're dealing with a character and a situation from day one that that is set and is exciting, and that's what we're latching onto, and the world builds around that character and that situation.
Yeah, exactly. Jill, for Ruby Sky, how much of a, say, like a story Bible have you created? Has that been necessary?
I built it for myself, but I want to go back to what Krishna said about starting with the audience and where story comes from. If you're starting with the audience, what frequently you'll find now is that there are audiences and communities that you can reach today whose stories haven't been told before. So, you know, mass media is about telling a different kind of story, a big story, a general story, but there are lots of communities whose stories have been missed. And if you do that kind of market research that Krishna was talking about, you can find communities who feel that their stories haven't been told before, and from there, story evolves. So if you build a story world around a community who feels that way, who haven't seen their stories on the screen before, they're actually giving you the narrative that will be very potent.
And I mean, with that, let's say somebody, I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I kind of think I know the answer, but let's say you found a community whose story hasn't been told, and you might think, well, that's a bit of a niche community. So how do you make that pay? How do you actually make that something worthwhile to do
Well, in the very specific is actually the universal. And I was just at a screenwriter, or the World Conference of Screenwriters in Poland, and I spent a lot of time with some of the screenwriters from Denmark. And if you know about what's happening with Danish television right now, is they're writing shows that are very specifically set in Denmark and that are traveling around the world. And that's because in the specific is the universal.
There you go.
I mean, I think you want to find the niche or the area where stuff can grow, and then as Jill says, you know, it becomes, if it's a really good story, it will become universal. But in the first parts of that story, ideally, and the first parts of the business developing and the audience developing, you have something tangible to work with, rather than, you know, competing against HBO or Fox or whatever, I guess.
No, I'm just thinking, sometimes, like, especially if you're a writer just starting out, people often say to you, write what you know, write from your own experience. But now, on this call, people are saying, well, let's research specific communities whose stories haven't been told. So how do I bridge that sort of gap, really, between the stuff like my life, which might be very generic, or maybe not, and the life of these other people that are very specific to them?
You've got to imagine you're Danish, Robert. You've got to put yourself in Denmark, and, you know, what is your life like?
It's getting drunk in Copenhagen, isn't it?
So right about that.
Did you get drunk a lot, Jill, in Denmark?
First of all, I was in Poland.
Oh, Poland.
I refused to answer that question. I don't think that's relevant.
No, you're right. Well, I'm just wondering how much research you did to get to know those local communities, so that you could then incorporate it. Because, you know, if you're doing the research, you surely have to live among the people rather than just observe.
Well, you can research in lots of different ways. I mean, part of the digital thing, and the fact that, you know, if you've got an area of interest, you can kind of go into a forum, or you can read what people comment on Facebook in groups, or you can look at what people comment about on Amazon, and you can find out a lot about what people think and what they, especially around niches and certain types of kind of groups and factions, I think. And just to go back to your point about writing what you know, I think it's a really tough question to answer, really, in relation to trying to aim a story into a niche. I don't know that you can, kind of, but, you know, you can live among the people of Denmark or Poland or wherever else.
But you know, I mean, that's the job of the storyteller, is to put on someone else's shoes and see the world and through their eyes and tell their stories. I mean, I've written, you know, for Muppets. I've written for, you know, shows about murder. I've written in a male voice and a female voice, children's voices. That's the job of being a storyteller, is putting on someone else's shoes and telling their story. So, you know, yes, there's lots of research, but also there's going deep within yourself and finding that place where it connects to you. And that's what writing what you know is you're writing the emotions that you understand and being human.
That was a great answer, actually. I mean, I wouldn't class myself as an A-class writer, but you obviously are, Jill. That's really well put. Obviously we are one man, one lady down. I mean, we sort of having a good chat, but I'm aware that we did promise a few things. So can I talk a little bit about Storyworld Development techniques, and then we can maybe throw it open? Let me just grab my notes, which I've now lost. So, I mean, as I said previously, I think, you know, the possibilities become quite massive and endless and hard to manage sometimes when you. I mean, I feel this myself, and it's been my experience when I've been sort of teaching workshops and classes around this sort of stuff, where we've been workshopping ideas and stories, and you know, it just goes crazy with some people who get it, and then they want to kind of either build the Taj Mahal of transmedia, or that it goes so kind of granular into strands that it couldn't possibly ever be made because it's just too big. So I think, you know, just to talk about techniques that will save time and resources. I mean, organising into a Storyworld Bible is a really, really great idea, and that's like a show Bible for television or film, or backstory kind of holding area. I mean, I tend to try and put into that stuff about audience trends and audience research, technology developments, and any technological things that might pertain to the story world. And also the kind of interactive element, whether that be game-based stuff or user-generated content or user interactions of some type, which to me is one of the kind of things that for myself was hardest to get with social media and transmedia, even though I was making interactive stories way before I got involved with that sort of stuff, and really getting the audience to participate was something that I found quite tricky, really. And I mean, I think Jeff Gomez put it really well when he said it's like putting an ear on your story. And when he said that, when I saw him talk once, it kind of made sense to me. And you know, it was certainly what was happening. It's just I couldn't quite figure out how to do it myself. So organising to a Storyworld Bible is really good. And I mean, some of the techniques that we use at Bellyfield, largely they are sort of expansion techniques, because we're taking a sort of a line of story that's maybe starts there, middle, end, not necessarily in that order. And then we're tending to, I can't draw a circle actually on the camera, a circle that holds the line of the story, which is much bigger. There's a diagram actually on our website, which I could, which you can find on the Bellyfield website, which shows kind of how we see this expansion into a world with lots of mini narratives spanning off the main line. So a lot of it's expansion and digression and creating lots of granular content, but the other technique that becomes like really important is to limit and put a boundary on it. And that ultimately is, you kind of have to draw the line somewhere, and it also becomes a creative boon to do that. So those are the kind of main techniques that we use. I mean, there's a lot more, but you know, I wanted to just talk about some things that might be useful for people on the call. So yeah, that's me done.
Have you got any specific techniques, Stu? Do you like have a process or workflow, or do you just let the creative sort of energy drive what you do next?
I try and plan multiple platforms, how they're going to roll out and be involved in the story world from the very beginning of developing a project, and anticipate what websites we're going to build, and also, you know, once we start working on a specific story, we spend a lot of time thinking about how that story is going to go in many directions, and what we're going to need in order to tell the other platforms. I tend to work, you know, in a very traditional kind of film, TV environment in terms of who's working around me, and so the challenge for me is always figuring out how to get the rest of them to think in a kind of transmedia, multi-platform, interactive way, and acquire the assets that we need. So, I don't know.
Yeah, no, because I hadn't even thought yet about the asset production, because that's another that's another angle. But I was just thinking about the way we approach it, because we're always thinking about experience first predominantly. So we think about how we're going to get the audience to do something, and then we sort of come up with a story to go around that. And through that process, we start to build out the story world, and then we try to actually reduce it back down again. A long time, well, not so long ago, maybe like a month or so ago, I did a blog post that was sort of like half tongue-in-cheek, but actually half serious, looking at a formula for how to see if your story world has got too many characters. And it was looking to say, is there enough drama between these characters? And if there isn't, then probably you should reduce them down. Because when we're doing stuff, it's predominantly, I'm not going to say like, it's not that it's non-linear, but it's spread across lots of different platforms. And so the more platforms you have and the more characters, it's very easy for it to get confusing. So I'm always trying to make sure that we optimize, and by optimize I usually mean reduce the number of platforms and characters, just to make sure it gels. And in terms of the story world, we're thinking about like factions or clans, like where can we see a role for the audience to come in and belong or make a choice about which clan or faction. If you think about the Hunger Games, where you can join a district or something like that, that's the, I wouldn't go as far as having 12 clans in something we do normally, because it's the lifespan of what we do is normally much shorter than that. But that's sort of one approach we take. Because it's a tricky area, I think. I think that you're always trying to balance off getting something done now that's actually doable, and that is, that it's something you can do within the budget that you've got right now. Because we could sit here, come up with like millions of ideas, I think, and grow this universe really big, and still not have anything to deliver by the end of the week or in 2 weeks' time. So I think that's the most important thing, is to actually get something done, and that's usually the biggest sort of determinant of how big the story world grows.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Interesting that you sometimes think about the experience first and then kind of fit stuff around that.
Pretty much always.
But that's the cool thing. We're in a period of such experimentation that everyone is approaching things differently, and all of our experiences are these little wells of knowledge. And that's what's so great about these opportunities to connect, is that then we begin to share what we know, and I can take what I learned from you guys and apply it to my next project. And so we build an industry and new excitement for our audiences.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And if we invent some rules, we can also break them too.
Well, breaking the rules is everything, right? Like, you want rules so you can break them.
We have one rule that must never be broken, and that is there should always be chocolate at the first writers' meeting.
I'm there.
It helps with the creative energy, I find.
Now, I just want to say, in Poland, I found this chocolate in a tube.
Is that liquid chocolate in a tube?
I don't know. I haven't tried it yet, but I think it's very cool. Chocolate in a tube.
Oh my goodness! Is that like some kind of space age technology where, you just sort of suck it while you're travelling or something? There was a Kickstarter project. Someone's done some kind of like Soylent Green type solution, so you never have to have a solid meal again. You can spend all day working at your desk and just suck on a tube of paste that's got all the vitamins in it. I think I'd go for the chocolate and spots before I went for the nutrients, that's for sure.
Too right.
Actually, I can feel the story world coming on already.
So have we got any questions from the floor? I don't know if we have. I did just do a check on Twitter. Has anything come through to you, Robert?
I've been too busy talking, Krishna. I'm going to see.
I'm not sure.
Hold on, give me a second.
Well, now's your chance. Anybody who's watching, like, we're not going to be on for too much longer because we started a bit late, but you know, we can take some questions. And there is a code for anybody who hasn't booked tickets who wants to come to the conference, which is next Friday on the 17th, and the code is the name of my home, which is
Manchester.
Bellyfield. No,
Oh.
Bellyfield. That's the code. That's 20% off tickets. So that's you go to, is it conductorconference.com? I always get, I don't know quite how to explain the spelling of conductor.
It's 2 T's and 1 R. It's Conduct Transmedia.
Conductorconference.com.
The frequent misspelling with 2 R's, but that's wrong because we're not pirates.
Is that right?
That's correct, Krishna. Well done.
Yeah. So use that code Bellyfield at conductorconference.com, and you get 20% off the ticket price. Any other thoughts from anybody? I've really enjoyed the call today. Sorry, it was a bit chaotic to start with. It's kind of freaked me out a bit.
I would say, I think one of the interesting things, so this is slightly related to this discussion. There's an EU project going on at the moment to look at like how can we build a sustainable transmedia industry, and one of the things that came up was the way sort of writers and other people in the sort of like the transmedia team get started and get collaborating together. And with Stott's idea of like the writers' room, where we have different people representing different sort of perspective on the project to come in. So we have someone from like user experience, somebody that's going to predominantly write, you know, the narrative, somebody from the technology area. And I wondered if either of you guys had taken that approach or have any kind of thoughts on that.
Well, you know, come from the teaching tradition where we definitely use story rooms. So you know, we write a lot of stuff in a group, and you know, it's great to have people who are in your room, who are in your story room, who bring different skills and different perspectives. I think it's a really, really useful way to work because it means you're not the only one who knows what's going on. You can have other people kind of carry some of the load because it is a lot of work to run something that's interactive and multi-platform, and you kind of need other people to know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, my experience of that is that we used to have a bigger team. It was really hard to maintain, and you know, as Jill just said, it's a lot of effort, and it can go on for ages. These type of deliveries and activities around interactive stories, and that's really not conducive to running with a big team. So we do tend to try and keep it quite small. But we have worked where we've had lots of different collaborators, you know, looking at games, looking at UX, looking at web, looking at story. But at the moment, we don't tend to work like that, which isn't to say we wouldn't in the future. I'll have to check out the EU thing because their methodology, their whole thing about funding interactive projects. When last I looked, I mean, the last time I kind of looked at it was between 2010 and maybe last year. It seemed to be the wrong approach, really. I mean, it was interesting. It had to be tied to a bona fide media exploitable media delivery, like a film or a TV show or something like that. But it didn't. There wasn't. It was really stringent, and I don't think they got any good projects out of it. Which, you know, it's all very well kind of meeting rules, meeting, you know, requirements, all that sort of thing. But if you don't get any good projects, nobody's going to watch them, are they? It's crazy.
No, exactly. Well, I think that's something that is being addressed now, to find a way of, you know, fostering new ideas and new sort of experiments, if you want to call them that, new formats, without needing to conform to traditional industries right now. Because one of the problems is those application forms are looking for a specific type of project, and this sort of think tank is looking at how they can be more flexible on that, or maybe even if we need those at all. But anyway, I didn't mean for the conversation to go down that route. I was just thinking about the story development.
But while we're talking about that kind of stuff, I just wanted to mention that Canada has digital co-production treaties with a lot of other countries, and I'll be there in London this week representing Canada. So if anybody has any great ideas for co-pros,
I've got about five. I will meet you for coffee, Jill.
Okay, great. I'm in on Wednesday.
Cool.
And the event is going to be very conducive to networking, because the way that we've organised the tables and the way that we've organised the actual venue and everything is intended to be so that people get talking to each other. And I'm even toying with the idea of telling people that they shouldn't, you know, like often you see people at conferences, and as soon as there's a break, they dive into their phone, and it sends out all the wrong signals that you don't want people to disturb you. So I'm going to ask people not to stick their head in their phone during the breaks, and to look up and look for somebody else that maybe they could go and speak to.
That's a good idea. It's pretty hard to police that kind of...
Oh, it's not, Krishna. You wait.
Okay.
We will have phone police to make sure people are having a nice time.
I'm game.
Are speaking to one another rather than talking into their phone. Okay, maybe that's a good note to wrap it up.
Yeah, cool. But remember, people can still get tickets, can't they, for the thing on the 17th? We're all going to be there, and others, and it's going to be a real hoot. I can't wait. And 20% off the ticket price if you quote that silly word, belly feel. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thanks, Krishna, for hosting the event, and thank you very much, Jill, for your wise words and joining us.
Thank you, Robert.
Looking forward to seeing you all in person.
Yes, going to be very good. Take care.
Brilliant. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.